I was kind of hoping you would accommodate John. John.
Okay, I think we have everyone back. So how are people feeling? Paperclip, relatively straightforward. Just remember those steps, like class notes are your friends here. There's nothing really complicated. You will do the exact same thing every single time you do paperclip. So there's no kind of like, you need to think about what to do. It's just really kind of go through those rote steps every single time. We're going to go over a couple different sort of like, I guess you could call them advanced things with paperclip, just some gotchas, some other things to think about. One thing, it wasn't in the class notes, but I thought it would make sense to mention, which is you might have a case where you have certain models in your application where you don't have an image in there, right? Either because you forgot to upload one or because you added your property after you had already created some books or whatever you're creating them in your system. And you might come up with cases where you don't have something there. And obviously, that doesn't look super great. You're going to get this missing right here, right? Which is not amazing. So you have a couple options there. Option number one is you can guard against that in your view, right? So inside my show view here, I could say here, if book.cover, I think I could say present. I'm going to just double check this. I'm basically saying if I have cover present, show the image tag. If I don't show anything. When I refresh that, it's going to hide it, right? So that's option one. You could just not show the image, right? Option number two is you might want to have something there anyway. It might be that your layout kind of like demands that there's an image file somewhere, and if you didn't have one, you want to show maybe a placeholder or something like that. That is also something you can do with paperclip. So yeah, if you need to not show it, you could just say, sorry, I'll just keep this here in case people need it. Book.cover.present. Basically, all I'm doing is calling .present after my attachment name, right? And you wouldn't put these. The reason I put these hash marks here is just to comment out the lines. So even though these lines are here, they're not doing anything right now. So if I were to refresh, I would still see my missing image. The other thing you can do is provide a placeholder. So if you actually inspect this in Chrome, you can see what paperclip does by default. By default, it will look for an image inside, in this case, covers, but that's going to be the name of your attachment. So if your attachment was named image, it would look at image, or images, sorry, it will be pluralized. It's going to have /original, and that just refers to the size. There's options in paperclip to resize images. We're going to get into that in a minute. Then it looks for missing.png. So if you want a placeholder image, you could just upload a PNG file so that it maps to that URL. And the way that you do that, I'm just going to find the PNG in here. So I'm going to take this awesome thing of my face, and I'm going to go into my Rails directory. And then there's a folder in every Rails directory called public, right? Anything you put in public will be served directly, like without any controllers, without any processing, without anything happening. It will just kind of be served without anything appended to it. So if I put something inside public, and then I'm going to use the same URL that they use here. So I'm going to make a directory called covers. I'm going to make a directory called original. So I'm just mimicking what they have. I'm going to paste in my image, and I'm going to rename it to missing.png. So now I have inside public, I have covers original missing. If my attachment was named image, I would say images original missing. And if you're ever unsure, you could just right-click on this and inspect and see what it's trying to give you. And just remember, everything it says here, start with public, and then you should have these directories inside public. So if it's covers, you need a covers directory inside your public directory. If it's original, you need an original directory inside that. And finally, your file needs to be named missing.png. And if I refresh that, I'm going to get that image showing up. Obviously, you wouldn't have something, you would just have like some kind of placeholder that represents no image, but that's a really useful thing to know. And you probably want to think about that because there's always going to be cases, for whatever reason, someone doesn't upload an attachment. That is actually something else that you can do as well. If you want to require that people do upload an attachment, remember that cover is an attribute just like anything else. So you could, if you wanted to, say validates cover presence is true, right? Same way we do with any other property. You can basically say, in order for a book to be valid, it needs to have a cover. Make sense? Cool. Yeah, so all I'm calling is cover. So book is my book, right? Cover is the name of my attachment, and I'm just calling .present. So .present isn't a magical thing associated with just paperclip. You can call that on any property, and if it's not present, that will return false. I'm going to come back to the screen, but I'm just going to talk about the next thing that we're going to do. So you may have noticed, depending on the file that you uploaded, mine wasn't ridiculous, but if you uploaded a really big picture from your camera or something like that, you may have noticed that it's gigantically massive and not really what you'd want on a page, right? And you probably want that to be sized to certain dimensions, right? You could do that with CSS, and there's nothing wrong with doing it with CSS, except for if someone's uploading a camera picture, it's going to be like 17 megabytes or something, and that's not something you want your users to have to download. Ideally, you would want to resize that file on the server so that you have a nice small file. There's no reason in giving someone something that's like 5,000 pixels wide when really all you need is like 300 pixels. And Paperclip gives you a way to do that. So it's possible to resize images when they get uploaded to your server and to even have different variants of sizes available in Paperclip. So in order to do that, it's really easy. The main thing we need to worry about, though, is we need to install a bit of a library to our system. And it's a library that kind of exists outside of Ruby. So there's a library called ImageMagick. And what that is it's kind of like a system utility for resizing and manipulating images and doing all kinds of crazy things with them. And we need to install it using Homebrew, right? So Homebrew is a thing. It's kind of like saying gem install, but it's for system libraries as opposed to Ruby libraries. Anytime you need to install anything with Homebrew, it's really easy. You just type brew, install, and the thing you want to install. So in our case, we're going to install ImageMagick. So it's image, and then magic is like magic with a K at the end of it, for some reason. I'm going to get Argy installed. You guys might see that, or you might see something that's doing a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to type this because I'm not sure if there's other stuff you have to do once it installs. No, you're fine. So if everyone could install ImageMagick, and just raise your hands if you're seeing any issues. It's possible you might get some crashes when you do this. Hopefully no one will. And if you want to see, is everyone good with that if statement, or does anyone need to see it still? Cool. And ImageMagick does a ton of stuff, and you can use pretty much all of that stuff through Paperclip. If you want to make images grayscale, if you want to colorize them, I think you can do like blur filters or crazy stuff like that. It has all kinds of functionality. We're going to focus on just resizing images because that's the most popular thing people would do with ImageMagick, but there are tons of options. So if you ever want to manipulate images on the server side, like make everyone who uploads images be sepia toned, this point. Everyone has it? Sweet. So once you have ImageMagick installed, and you will only have to do that once, it's not per project, you're good forever and ever on that computer, you can add some options to Paperclip. So one of the options you can add is this styles attribute. And inside that, you supply different styles. So what we're doing here is is we're saying we have a cover attachment, and it's going to have two different sizes associated with it. It's going to have a medium size, and it's going to have a thumbnail size, right? And when you put this in here, ImageMagick will automatically do both of these conversions and save them as separate files, right? So I'm going to put this in here under my book model. I'm just going to hit enter here so you guys can see it all. But that can totally be on the same line. And what you supply over here is the actual sizes of your images. You might notice that there is a greater than sign right here. So it's like, I want this image to be 300 by 300, and I want this to be 100 by 100, but there's a greater than sign. What that is for images that don't neatly fit into those dimensions. So if someone uploads a super rectangular picture, what this will do is it says, this attribute is allowed to grow, right? So it should be at least 300 by 300, but if you need to, and it's width times height, I think. Let me look at the notes. Actually, I don't think it's associated with either. It's basically saying make sure its maximum size is 300 by 300, but maintain the aspect ratio. So if it's rectangular, don't stretch it out. Basically, make sure it's at most 300 characters tall and at most 300 characters wide, but maintain the aspect ratio so that you don't get any blown out images because someone uploaded a super wide image or a super tall image or something like that. There's a bunch of other options, and we'll walk through them actually really quickly. But let's just see this work. So I'm going to go in, and I'm just going to edit my image for my test book. So I'm going to go to Edit Book here. I'm going to choose a file, and I don't know what to use. I'm trying to find something big. Okay, so I have this thing with all these tools on it, right? And it's 3,346 by 2,231. So a giant, giant image, right? I'm going to choose that, and I'm going to update my book. And you'll notice nothing's changed on our show page yet, right? We're still seeing that enormous image. What we need to do is when we have different styles associated with our image, we have to say which one of them we want to use inside our view, right? So right here we're saying book.cover.url, and if you don't supply any options there, that assumes that you're going to use the original image, the actual original image that they uploaded. If you want to use something different, you can just supply the name of the style here, right? Now I'm saying, show me the medium version of this book. And when I refresh that, I'm going to get something that is going to constrain itself to 300 by 300. If I were to put thumb in here instead, I'm going to get something that's 100 by 100. So it's a really nice way to be able to resize your images, and that's actually resized on the server, right? So if I go to my network tab, and I look at how much is being downloaded, I'm only downloading 10 kilobytes. Whereas before, let's say that I was constraining this with CSS. Like, actually, I'll do it right now. I'm going to say height is 100, right? But I'm still going to use the original URL. When I refresh that, I mean, everything looks the same, but I'm actually downloading 2.3 megabytes, which isn't that great, right? So ideally, set up sizes for what you actually want your images to be sized as. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I'll just resize them at the time of upload, and they're saved at that point.
Yeah. So what actually happens? Let me just show you how it works really quickly. So I think I'm trying to remember where Paperclip even saves stuff. No. Lib. Trudy or Jesse, do you know? Oh, yeah, it totally is. So by default, it's going to save it inside public. So if you want to see the actual files, I can go to public and then system. Then it's going to be my model name, so books. Then the name of my attribute, which is covers. Then it does these arbitrary directories, just basically so one directory doesn't get too big. You can just kind of skip over this. And again, and again. This is not really intended for people to browse through, but there you go. You'll notice we have 3 directories here. We have medium, original, and thumb. Paperclip will always store the original size of the image, right? But it will also resize the image at the point that someone uploads it and store it in that directory, right?
So if you add additional sizes later after you already had a database of images?
Excellent question. So that is a problem. And if you did that, it wouldn't be present, right? So if I added a small, I'll just show you really quickly. So I'm going to go to book.rb. Let's say we added a style of small, right? And we made that, say, 200 by 200 greater. And then on our show page, we use small here. That wouldn't work because it couldn't find the image. There is a way that you can get around that. What you do is inside your project directory, you say rake paperclip. If you want to know what you can run with rake, you can run rake -T, and it will tell you all the things you can do. So you could say rake paperclip refresh, and that will go through every attachment in your system and regenerate. Oh, I'm not specify class. Then I'd say class equals book. That will regenerate every image in your system based on those original files that were uploaded. So when I refresh this now, I'm going to get the proper thing in there. Yeah, I think there's a way to do it on all your models, but no, I guess not. So it's rake paperclip refresh, all capital letters class equals, and the name of the class you want to refresh it for. Cool.
You do that on the basis if somebody requested it, it's not available.
You mean like on demand? The only time that it wouldn't be available is if you've made a code change, right? So you would want to do it when you add a new style, and then you don't have to worry about checking for it when someone's doing it live, because there's never a possibility that, like, without you changing code, a new style gets added, right? Let me show you some of the resizing options. If you're ever unsure about this is just on the Paperclip Gem homepage, which will be on GitHub. So under post-processing, you can also, by the way, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with Paperclip. I haven't done this personally, but you can do stuff like if someone uploads a PDF file or an image file with text in it, you can actually do OCR on it and detect the text that's actually in that file. It can do crazy stuff. But this is, okay, so here's another option that you can see here. So this is 32 by 32 with a pound sign after it. That basically is kind of the opposite of what we had before, where we said greater than, which basically means make sure that it's a maximum of 300 by 300, but maintain aspect ratio. This is, I don't care what it is, but I want you to make it a square. Like, basically squash or compress or change around the aspect ratio so it's exactly this size, right? Trying to see if there's so many things in here. I'm trying to find all the image resizing. Right, so we're saying only shrink larger. There's also an only enlarge smaller images, so if you put a less than symbol. And what I'm looking up here to find this is I'm looking up the documentation for ImageMagick, which is the library that's actually doing this. You can also say be at least 300 by 300 characters, but if you need to get bigger to maintain aspect ratio, that's fine as well. I don't really know the other options, but there's a bunch of other stuff you can do. You can get it so that it crops images if they get too big. So it maintains the square, but it won't stretch images. It will just crop off the edges of them. You do percentage resizes. There's tons and tons of things you can do here. But basically, look at the paperclip documentation. It will give a lot of examples for all this kind of stuff. Oh. Actually, hold on. Let me just try that. Sorry, you can also say rake paperclip :refresh missing styles, which is in the notes, and I completely forgot about it. Does the same thing, except it will do it on every model in your system, so you don't have to supply the argument. So this is kind of like always safe to run. It never hurts. Cool. Yeah, so that's image sizing. I have one last thing I want to talk about with paperclip, and I think I mentioned earlier. Right now, we're saving everything to the public directory. That works fine when we're on our own computer. If you deploy to Heroku or you deploy to any server where you have potentially multiple web servers, that's not going to work very well. You want to store your images and files, anything that's not your application code, on a separate service. So there's services that are custom built for storing files, right? The one we're going to teach you is Amazon S3, which is just basically think of it as like a giant hard drive in the cloud, right? It's a way of saving files and then making them available for everyone else. It's absurdly cheap. It's basically free for whatever you guys are going to be doing. You can pay for it at some point, but like the company I used to work for, Fluitive, like, you know, many years in, I think we were paying something like $5 per month for like hundreds of thousands of images, like crazy amounts of images. So it's really cheap no matter what you do. And basically, it's really easy to work with paperclip. Paperclip automatically has support for S3, and you just have to tell paperclip, I want to store my data on S3 rather than storing it on my local computer. The way that we're going to do that is we're just going to supply some configuration to paperclip to tell it that's where we want to store it. So we're going to open up our configuration file for our application. Where you find that is always going to be in config application.rb. So this is the main configuration file for your entire application. We're just going to add some code to this. I'm just going to copy and paste, but I'll explain what this is. This is coming straight from the notes. This is basically setting defaults for paperclip across every model that we might want to use paperclip in. The first default that we're supplying is where we want to store things. So by default, it's going to store it inside the public directory. We're telling it, no, I want you to store it in S3 instead, right? So every time someone uploads an image, it's actually going to upload that image to Amazon. And then we just have to supply credentials for where we want these images, or how we log into Amazon, where we want these images to go. So we need to give it an access key ID and a secret access key. And then we have to give it a bucket, which is kind of like the directory we want to put our images in, right? So under access key ID and secret access key, I am going to give you my access key. Please don't start a bunch of servers and make me pay hundreds of dollars. I will be turning these off in a couple days, so if you want to do this on your own thing, sign up for Amazon. I guarantee you for anything you do with this class, you won't pay a cent, and even if you would, it would be very cheap. But you do have to give a credit card, unfortunately. But it gives you the limits. It's like you can upload gigabytes of things before you have to worry about it. But I'm going to paste these into Slack because I didn't want to put them in the class notes. And I'm just going to paste this in, and then probably I'll answer your question after we do this. And you just want to put this information in place of your access key and your secret. I'm going to paste that right there. And then under secret, paste that right there. And then under bucket, put your name here. So I'm going to put HackaU-Ryan Brenner. The reason we're doing that is so that everyone has their own little directory that we're putting things into, and we're not overwriting each other's files. Because we're uploading into the same S3 account. And once you save that, that's really it. Once you've done that, everything will automatically upload to S3. There's not really too much more to it. One thing to keep in mind, this stuff is super, super, super secret. Never, ever, ever, ever upload an AWS access key to GitHub. More so, like everything I've told you about secret access keys, it is like triply true for Amazon because there are bots that specifically look for AWS access keys and then kick off a bunch of instances, and you will rack up like a $1,000 bill in about 5 minutes. I think that happened to you, right,
Yeah,
Judy?
I did. At some point, getting more stuff for like Amazon sent me a message saying like, we think it's happened. Like, you get 2 hours later, I just said,
So never, ever, ever let this stuff get leaked. You might want to use .env for this or something like that. We're just doing this for an example. You probably want it in .env. All I can ask you guys, because it's my access key with my credit card, just don't push this to GitHub. Please, please, please.
So how would you like hide this? Push this to GitHub? How would you keep your
Okay,
access key
so
out?
number one, if you have a private repository on GitHub, right, you don't have to worry. It's private, no one's going to see it, right? If you have a public repository, what you want to do is what we did with .env, right? You would change these. I'm just going to copy this. You would take all these. Have I set up .env here? I haven't. You would change this to env AWS access key, right? You change this to env AWS secret. You'd install .env Rails. It's in our notes under, what class was that? Sorry? Yeah, when we did social sign-on, it's in the notes, but you'd install .env Rails, right? You'd create a .env file. You'd put that in your git ignore and don't commit it, and then everyone you gave your project to, you would have to separately, securely send them your .env file, right? Obviously you don't want anything in a public Git repository that's sensitive, right? So you'd have to come up with another mechanism of like securely sending them that information.
and then when you push the Heroku also.
Yeah, you would, on Heroku, you would say Heroku config : add, and then AWS key. Anytime you change anything in the config directory for any reason whatsoever, you have to restart your server. So gems and the config directory are the two things you need to restart your server for. So I'm going to restart my server. Another kind of crappy part, when you change how your storage works, I don't know a way to actually get Paperclip to migrate all this stuff over. So you do kind of have to manually deal with that. When I refresh this, it will be broken. Yeah. I don't know a way to do that. You can get it to regenerate missing styles. I don't think you can get it to like move storage for you. But we can edit, and I can choose my file again. And when I update my book, it's taking a little bit longer this time because it actually does need to upload to Amazon as part of this. And we have a bad Wi-Fi connection, and 25 people are doing it simultaneously. It's faster than this in practice. Your server won't run? Just here, Judy. Can you take a look? Okay, and it uploaded. Trust me, it's not that bad. That was extreme. And just to show you that that actually worked, I'm going to go into my Amazon account. So if you want to sign up for Amazon, it's aws.amazon.com. You can use whatever. If you have an Amazon account, you can actually use that. And I'm going to sign in. And Amazon gives you a ton of stuff. S3 is a very, very small part of it. This is all the crazy stuff you can get with Amazon. You can run everything about your server off of Amazon. When you're running on Heroku, you are running off of Amazon. They're just kind of subcontracting Amazon. But S3 is the thing that actually is like your hard drive in the cloud. And we can see HackerU Ryan Brenner. When I go into that, I see books, covers, and it's exactly the same file structure that I had before, right? Did no one else try to upload one, or is everyone else having problems? Okay. Let's get everyone working, and then I'll talk about a couple other things. But that's all there is for Amazon, but let's get everyone. Did anyone actually, was anyone able to upload one? No? Okay. Okay, so. Yes, did you restart Shipper?
Yes. Oh, you don't see this now.
I don't have any good reason to say that. It's not real. Let that one person try running it again. Just gonna see if anyone else was able to.
Yes.
People getting issues with uninitialized constant blah blah blah.
Yeah, you guys go ahead.
Yeah, I mean everyone has it. My computer is awesome and no one else's is. Can you see what version of AWS SDK they have? Yeah.
Yeah, 2.2.
Oh.
You have a quite a bit of
I have a super old version.
that should answer. So, what the documentation says. You tell the USSD content, and then specify using S3 from has attached file. Oh.
Don't worry, that's what the default does, right? Yeah, no. I have the old version is the problem. Okay, you know what? Sorry. Can everyone change their gem file to AWS SDK-V1? Yes. I had an older version 1, and they actually switched it off, but you have to use V1 now. Sorry? Oh, they haven't like released a new version. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. Let's use V1 for now. After you do that, say bundle install again and then retry. So yeah, AWS SDK updated. Paperclip does not support those updates yet. Christopher mentioned you can grab Paperclip directly from GitHub. You're running a development version then, and it's kind of all bets are off. So I recommend just using V1 of the AWS SDK. And give it a try. I hope it works for everyone.
Image you uploaded.
Try editing and uploading it. Did you re-upload it after you did the AWS? How's it? Oops. Oh, actually, sorry. Oh.
Really large. So you guys have covered our attention.
Okay. Yeah. This has to match. Yeah.
So actually,
Taking your eyes to the That's you're working. It's an excellent picture. You guys are working over there. Okay. Yeah, I think Windows did it. Oh, you have it. You have the. Ended up doing using Ajax just
and then just
use Word.
So
There's like tons of arguments. It's like it's basically just sit down. It didn't even upload it just
Just going to answer a question for Wally that he asked in the Slack room. Can Paperclip be used for handling deduplication during file uploads? It cannot. If you upload the same file, it will use the same file name twice. If you need to get into like crazy high scale, multiple terabytes of images, Paperclip might not be industrial grade enough for you. If you're doing like profile images, frankly, having duplicates of images, like considering how cheap file storage is, it's not really that big a deal. But if that's important to you, I don't know what you can use, but it's not Paperclip. I'm sure something exists. I just don't know it off the top of my head. I'm going to talk about FilePicker actually as an alternative. But FilePicker also will not do that. No.
It's just too. So you have to like build it from scratch or something.
No, I'm sure something exists. I just, off the top of my head, I don't know.
Saving the new one. That's actually really
Sort of images for you. Okay, that was just weirdness, I guess. Yeah, you go. So yes, it lives on Amazon, and so it's sort of for you should be way faster than eBay. You store the images yourself. And Roku is the logos and serve them on. And Trump doesn't store them for you. As long as you make that servers. Just look into it. It's easy. Pretty easy to set up. This is local, yeah.
Any other questions about FilePicker or what it can do or anything like that? Or Paperclip and what it can do, things like that?
Sorry.
Any other questions on Paperclip or what you can do with it, that sort of thing? Cool. I'm going to show you guys one other thing. Paperclip does a bunch of stuff and has tons of functionality, resizing images, blah, 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 tons of options. If you need something simpler that is potentially a little bit easier to use, another thing there's something called FileStack. It used to be called FilePicker, which is another excellent choice. The difference between FilePicker and Paperclip, with Paperclip, all of the files are being sent up to your Rails server and you're processing them directly. That gives you a lot more functionality. You can do some of that crazy stuff like doing OCR. You have more control over resizing. You have all that kind of stuff. But if you want like something really, really simple, FileStack is actually really, really great. And you can just go to filestack.com and go to use it free. And basically, when you're using FileStack, you're not going to have all of those different columns on your database. You're just going to have one column, which is basically here's the URL of my image. It's going to be a normal string column, the same as every other string column that we've created. And FileStack is going to take care of all the uploading to S3 and like managing the file and all that. You just get a reference to a URL, and that's it. And it's really, really easy to do. You basically just get a script tag, and you can just put this in your application.html.erb. And again, I'm just going to FileStack's homepage and kind of grabbing this stuff. You can go in and see the same instructions. So I'm going to paste in that script tag. And then instead of having all of the file field sort of thing, I'm just going to have an input type of file picker, right? And the way that I do that in Rails is if I wanted to have that instead, I would go to my show page, sorry, my form page. I'd get rid of this. I would have the input tag, cover, type is file picker. And then I need this data attribute. So I'd say data FP API key. I do a little hash rocket and supply my key. And then I just want to show you what this looks like. It's something to check out if you're interested in it. Sorry, I can't use input tag. I think I would say f.textfield, sorry. f.textfield cover type is file picker. When I refresh that, I get this like handy dandy pick file. When I click on that, I get this like crazy pop-up where I can upload files from my computer. I could use Google Drive or Box or OneDrive or GitHub or Gmail. I can like record pictures from my webcam. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff. This gives you a much nicer front-end experience. You get less control over what you can do with the actual resultant image, right? Sorry, it's like a pop-up. It was hard to see with my inspector. So that is another option that you can do. Go to File Picker, and then it gives you a much easier experience. And then as far as Rails is concerned, this would just be like a string column on your database. You wouldn't have to have some gem controlling this. You would just like Rails generate migration, add cover URL to book, it'd be cover URL string. So another thing you could check out if you're interested in that. That's all I had for today. Anything else I can cover for people? Can do final project stuff. Cool. Thursday is probably going to be sending emails through us, so we'll go over how to generate mailers, send off emails, how to use like Mailgun, which is another third-party service, because unfortunately sending emails is not something, you need some kind of third party to do that for you. Good stuff.
Okay, we are live. How do you get consider logging on your add a Rails 12 sector? So too. It's literally nowhere. Oh, that's yes. So to do it. Oh, I still don't know. When did that book work? Okay, so that would be why.
You might want to put it in production.
Yeah, you don't need to do anything else.
Well, the only reason is like, if you put it, if you don't put it in development, it's not going to unlock it. Anyways, this should work. Sure. Try that.
Yeah, give that a try. I'm sorry, I stole the wrong one. I expected it to fail if it wasn't real.
I want to see what that is. That's like the jerkiest.
That is pretty jerky.
You're lying.
Big bundle! You're gonna do it and then open it? Yeah.
No, I'm just trying to call him a liar.
It's an experiment.
Such a liar.
think. This. Boom. Wait, it didn't bundle?
You're a liar.
Didn't it bundle?
What just run the bubble?
Why do you need to build this class? I have thrown of lies.
We swear to God, it's not dude. Yeah, the last thing is, Jason only sent straight, it doesn't send like actual. Marco sent it.
Yeah, I sent it.
Yes.
No, I mean, you could just basically collect image. That's never sent anyway. It's just source attribute. Okay. Yeah, the data types on is on either. Can send booleans, can send numbers, strings, but can't say anything.
Right.
Yes.
Because I was asking because we have a discussion about like this. And I was actually working with WordPress when it actually existed.
Yeah.
So it was like whether or not it was sending all the data, except
This is when it actually started.
I think it
doesn't slow it down.
no, it almost never will slow it down. It's almost always faster to render on the client side than to try to render it on the server. Yeah.
So,
So by definition, it kind of. I mean, you can fuck up how you're writing the client side code. It's slow, but yeah, by default.
so here you did commit.
I put it.
If you push it around, you push it around, that's true. Right there. Close that joke. I just need an O. Yeah, that's it. That would be you. So, yeah, I don't know if you have this, but you Sublime. Bills. Yes. Now. Now we can need status, which actually some changes. We have changes. Okay, bundle.
So, I just want to ask you that too. Which one exists? Waiting for trailers, launchers, wheelchairs, or just one page and two.
One page of the random whatever. It's fine. Yeah. That's not your problem. That's totally fine. You need to get it so that you're all the logic is fine. Also, having a say and you should just be like dumbly spinning out parameters. Once you do